Welcome back to another episode of the EVO 6 STI Killer presented by Koyorad. Today we begin to build out the intercooler system. Before we get started on the whole intercooler system, I wanted to thank all of you for all your comments in the previous video and suggestions on some of the hot side turbo items. There were also some questions, so let's get to those now. Many of you were saying that this AC line is not going to last despite me wrapping it. It's just way too close for header heat and whatnot. So one of you, actually I should say a couple of you, suggested I get an EVO 8-9 AC line, and what that's going to do is actually reroute this line going down that way, which is going to omit the whole header thing and this whole issue with the AC line running that way. So thank you so much. I think that's going to be a huge solution for this. I've actually already ordered it. A lot of you commented about the clearance that I have between the wastegate dump pipe and the radiator. And I know right here it looks like it's pretty much nothing. It's hard to show you guys on video, but there's about 10 mil of clearance, so I'm confident that it's not going to hit the radiator. I know that these engine mounts are the Rally Art ones now too, so they should provide a little bit more stiffness. This motor should not be moving as much. Some of you suggested that this cam angle sensor is also going to suffer some heat soak and could potentially fail because of how close the header is. So what I'm gonna do is just make a bracket for this guy. I also had a little bit of time to plumb up the AAM boost controller that we're gonna be using with our Link ECU. And once again, good amounts of the DEI heat shielding were used right here to run it down to the tile wastegate. So I think we're going to be okay. We're not going to be melting any vacuum lines because that would be kind of problematic. A possible solution for how close that wastegate is to replace this rad with the Koyo half rad. So Koyo actually makes a rad that's half the size, which opens up that entire area for the turbo system. However, because we're going to be hitting the racetrack, I don't think it's going to work for us. So I'm going to test this one out first, and then if we do have contact issues with that wastegate, I'll explore options later. If you've got a keen eye, you'll also notice that I added a DEI turbo sleeve exhaust housing blanket, and that's going to trap all of the heat into the turbine housing and not let it radiate out further. Shout out to Julian at JRPU, who also messaged me and said, yo, you need to get one of these PTP turbo blankets for your tile MVR wastegate. They make one specifically for it, so I'm going to wrap that as well. I also redid the wastegate dump because I was worried that it was just the angle that it was on, it was just spewing out exhaust fumes right up against the oil pan, and I just thought it was too close. It was going to rub a little bit here as well. So this, I don't know. I think it's a little bit better this way. It's forcing the fumes down and then outwards versus just like pushing them against the oil pan. And I just tweaked it a little bit out this way, further away, to add a little bit of heat management here as well. In the last episode, I also talked about a bracket that should have gone from here to here, and I just ended up taking the easy way out, which is welding on a hanger right there on one side. I don't think we're gonna need it to the other side, especially because we don't have a heavy cat in here. We've got this titanium pipe, so I think this one hanger should do the trick for me. One of you asked what I was doing for my oil temperature sensor, and as you can see, the factory oil filter housing on the Mitsubishi has these two plugs right up here and then there, and all I did was remove that, put a 3/8, I think, to 1/8 NPT adapter, and put the oil temperature sensor in there. That's probably one of the easier solutions out there. I didn't show you this in the previous episode, but I did install a bung for a wideband, and that is our AAM O2 wideband sensor, which again is going to be plugging into the Link ECU. With all of that out of the way, it is now time to get down to the intercooler system. So let's start off by showing you what I've got for an upgraded intercooler. Here we have our stock intercooler, and boy has it seen better days. Not only that, It's, I think, rated to about 400 crank horsepower for efficiency. So of course I wanted to make an upgrade, and I am going with Koyo's latest and greatest. This is their intercooler core that is tube and fin, which is a hard thing to find on the market, and I personally like tube and fin for the way it looks. It's got less aerodynamic drag as the bar and plate ones do, and it's much lighter. So the downside is, though, it isn't as strong. So I guess in an accident it doesn't hold up as well, but I mean, at that point I think you're going to be replacing an intercooler anyways. Nevertheless, this is just the core, as you can see. So for end plates, I have gone with ATP's cast end tanks, and these are absolutely fantastic because they're super inexpensive and they fit up pretty much perfectly onto this core, which means I'm gonna have to do a little bit of aluminum welding, and I'm not extremely confident with that. Full disclosure here, I'm not gonna weld this intercooler completely. I don't think my aluminum fab skills are up to par, and if I melt through this intercooler, it's donezo. So I'm just gonna tack this up and then leave it for Vin at NV Auto. But first thing I'm gonna do here is I think put a bunch of heat into the corner that I want to weld in place, because I know this is a thin piece of metal, this is very thick, and as I said, it's real easy to burn through the thinner piece of metal of aluminum if you don't have proper heat into both of these pieces. Come on, PT, let's not burn a hole here, buddy. Woo! All right, one well done. Ooh, that's dirty, but it is getting on there. I'm finding that I do need to pedal it very quickly. I know with aluminum, you don't want to sit there and dabble at, like, you know, medium throttle per se. You just really want to get into the amperage, get those two puddles melted together. And of course, I am out of propane on my little torch here. Great timing, isn't it? Oh, dang. Well, that did not work well. My very unsteady hand, I don't know if you guys can see that, but wow, I pretty much put all of the aluminum rod onto my tungsten tip there. Jeez, again? In order to ensure I have proper placement of the Koyo intercooler, as you can see, I've mocked up this highly scientific piece of wood and some jack stands to get this to kind of the right height of the current intercooler right now. And I'm gonna take this one off and put the Koyo one up here. So I think my placement is going to be right around there. Now, in case you're wondering, this core isn't available on Koyo's site. This is the 700 horsepower model. If you're looking for information on it, if you want to buy it, send an email directly to Koyo Rad. I'll include that in the description. To mount this intercooler up, what I think I'm going to do is build a bracket that runs from this hole right here down to this bolt hole. The factory ones are tucked right behind the intercooler, so I don't think they're a good option. And then I will also make a bracket that goes from here to here. And there you have it. Intercooler is finally mounted up. 3 brackets took a long time, as everything does. I had to recreate a couple because my measurements were off, and then on this side here I noticed that the power steering lines were in the way, so I had to shift this bracket down here. As you saw, everything is rubber isolated, so this thing is going to have movement and play. I think the next step here is to test fit the bumper and see if all this work was for nothing or if I lucked out and made it all right. I went to go put the bumper on, and lo and behold, I realized these 3 mounting points up here for the bumper have bolts that were broken in them. So it is bolt buster time. I think this is going to be the best way to extract it. So much smoke, oh my goodness. Usually I can get it to glow. I'm not trying to achieve that this time. I just want to make sure that the bolt that's left in there has got some good heat in it. All right, let's try this now. Come on. There it goes. There we go. Big moment here, guys. Bumper is on. And check it out. Wow! It is looking good. I think I lucked out, and the intercooler is centered pretty much as good as it could get. Thank goodness. I was so paranoid that if I screwed this up, it wouldn't look good. But the next question is, there's supposed to be a grill that goes up in this whole front area, like a mesh. And I gotta say, I am liking it without it, just with that big front mount sitting right there. Kind of figured I would run into a problem with the outlets. Being that this intercooler is so much wider than stock, we do have ourselves a situation right here, and you can see the bumper is hitting the outlet, and I still got to put a coupler on there. And what I really don't want to do is have to cut up the bumper. If you watched our M3 intercooler install, you will be familiar with this Vibrant Cast 90. So what I think I'm gonna do is lop this off right around here and then weld this on and just turn it downwards a little bit, which is ideal. And that way it'll give me the space, it'll clear the bumper, and I should be able to get a rubber coupler on there with no problem. There we go. That looks very close to being level. Woo! There we are. All right. And in case you guys are wondering, I did stuff a rag in there just to make sure we don't get a lot of shavings. She's still tight in there. Really, really tight. Seems to be the theme of this build here. I'm looking at it, and I've gotten a significant improvement out of where it was before, but it's still going to be touching the bumper right here. I'm not necessarily sure that's terrible. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. There is still a duct that has to come here. I was looking at it, and that actually may end up covering up a little bit of this. It really just depends how much further out this bumper goes, so that's a hard decision to make right now. Nevertheless, I think what I'm going to do is just clock this the right way and tack weld it up. Dipped it, man, it's just like always such a weird thing. I'm constantly dipping, and I just don't know if that's because I'm just careless with the rod, my hands are too shaky or what, but man, yeah. Anyways, I think 2 tack welds is enough. We should be good to go. And there it is. Intercooler is back on, which means it is now time to move on to the lower intercooler pipe. And this is a MA Performance piece, and this is for EVO 8.9. I thought it could work, but I'm quickly learning a lot of 5.6 components vary over the 8.9 stuff. And having to put this on kind of changed my whole ball game as to how I was going to make this fit. I don't think this would have fit anyways, judging by the look of it. It may have, but anyways, I'm going to have to cut this thing up. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is just lop this off around here, which is going to give me the ability to put a coupler onto it, and then we can kind of like figure out our routing underneath. I cut that 90 off the pipe, and looks like we're gonna have better fitment here. I've got this long, I don't know, I think that's probably 8 inches? 8 inches of 2.5 inch vibrant rubber coupler. That's gonna come in very handy here because the transition from here to here is a little bit longer than the usual 3-inch piece that they sell. So I'll be able to use that there. As you can see over here though, man, this is gonna be another problem because this piece is too long. So I'm gonna have to, I think what I'm gonna start off by doing is shortening this a little bit. And the piece that MA Performance provides is for a stock size turbo. So the outlet, I think, is a little bit smaller. Thankfully, I did source a vibrant 90-degree coupler that goes, I think, from 2 inch to 2.5. So we should be good over there. Another piece of the puzzle down. As you can see, it wasn't too bad. I did a little bit of fabricating, had to add on that extra piece. And on this side, that 90-degree vibrant coupler came in very, very handy. Also used their bead roller to pass another, like a bead onto this side of the pipe. And finished everything off with a little bit of some DEI heat shield, of course. That way it's gonna reflect all the heat from the screamer pipe. And even though it is tight, I think we've got a decent amount of clearance here. Like if I push on this, it doesn't look like it's hitting anything. So now it is time to move on to this side. The cold side will be much easier than the hot side because I ordered an STM EVO 456 upper intercooler pipe kit from MA Performance, which means this should fit up without me having to do any real modification. The only downside, I think, where I may run into an issue is right around here, because usually this pipe would fit up with the stock intercooler, and I think it'd be further in over here. So I'm hoping I can just cheat it outwards a bit and we'll be all right. Everything fit up very, very nicely, except right here. As expected, we do have a slight issue, but people, the stash comes through again. Look at this, it's like a 45-degree. It may be perfect, it may work. Great success, look at that. That coupler came in so handy and it fits pretty much like a charm. Wow, okay, so that was like a 2-minute install versus a 2-hour install on the other side, but look at that, everybody. We do have a intercooler system set up and ready to go. To wrap this one up, we are going to finish off by installing the last piece of our charge pipe system, and that is Tile's latest and greatest QRJ blow-off valve. This is a compact design, but still has a ton of high flow potential. It's extremely customizable, as I'll show you in a second. It's got a ton of options, but it's actually been specifically designed for vehicles such as the EVO that require controlled throttle input and linear response. So it's actually the perfect blow-off valve for this car. And the one thing to note is I actually had to go out and buy an adapter because the STM intercooler piping has a Tile blow-off valve flange on it already, but it's for their larger 50 mil. I think it's their Q series. So now what I have here is the adapter for it. So I'm going to screw this on here, and then this will now easily adapt onto the charge pipe. And I'm still not sure whether I'm going to end up recirculating or dumping to the atmosphere for a nice blow-off valve sound. We'll see. There it is. That's what it would look like with the dump to atmosphere, and this is the piece that you would use to recirculate. And you can also, they have other options where you can hook this up, so this can go on a stock EVO. Very, very customizable, but let's get this bolted on here because I'm excited to see what it looks like. Wow, that looks so good there. Holy smokes, I love it. I absolutely love the purple accent on the wrinkle black charge pipes. It really sets off the engine bay. There is one question here, and that is if I don't recirculate this and leave it venting to atmosphere, do I turn it this way or do I turn it this way? I don't know. I'm kind of liking it this way. Anyways, post in the comments. Let me know what you think. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Next up, we've got a fan to fit in here, an intake to make, a battery to put in. There is a lot coming, and of course, it's going to be tight. So if you're thinking about supporting us, make sure to check out Patreon. We always appreciate a couple bucks here and there. Also, check out our merch store because right now, everything is 20% off. It's just a way of us saying thank you and giving back to you guys. Horse. Pipe. Why? Why you always gotta be on me?